we have been in this, fight or flight for a long time, right? And so many unknowns out there. And so this, hunkering down that we all had to do, right? And then things started to lift, right? We got the vaccines, people started to reemerge into the world, and we all started going to conferences again, to networking events again, and showing up in our spaces again. And what I'm feeling right now is almost what I'm calling like whiplash. I feel like folks are going back to retreat.
It's literally the conversation that we need to be having, right? Like things have kind of shifted in the space of COVID, and things are reopening and we can travel and do more things. And I think a lot of people underestimate like how that can be a challenge for so many people who have social anxiety, general anxiety, depression, even. That this is difficult for them. This is a really difficult transition, and not as just going back to the way it used to be. That doesn't really, that may not be their truth and their experience of what's happening for them. And they're needing that additional support to help them come back in, because especially for people struggling with depression and anxiety, staying in isolation a lot of times intensifies those symptoms, right? And kind of, in some ways, can worsen the problem or symptoms that maybe that they're experiencing. So they do need to find their community and come back, but it's kind of a way of like, how can we, walk with them in this journey and help them take those little steps, step by step, to reintegrate into their community. Having spaces like this, whether it's like in the format that we're doing, or a group discussion with some members in your co-working space, but just opening the floor up so that those that have been struggling with it and feeling alone, they might see a conversation like this and be like, oh, this is a real thing. It's okay. Other people feel this way. And so sometimes just normalizing the challenge for people can be really, really helpful and beneficial. So that's one thing. And I think, with Hera Hub, one thing that I really like is there's a combination of spaces that are virtual, and then you have, networking. There's a co-working space, obviously, but having both is kind of nice, because I can get that sense of what the community is like in a way that maybe works for me, which could be on a Zoom, like accountability call, where there's not 150 people, but there's a few people, and I can start to see some faces. I'm still at home, so I feel safe and comfortable. But then maybe when I am ready to take that next step and go into the co-working space, maybe I see some of those faces that I saw on a virtual call, right? So it kind of helps me to feel like I'm not walking into a space where I'm not going to know anybody in there at all. And like, okay, let me try to navigate this. So I think that's really helpful. And then I know from my own experience of some of the events that I've been hosting, and just asking for feedback of like, what was it like for you to come here today? And I've heard that from some people, like the challenge or maybe nervousness of walking into a new space. And what helped them was that they came with a friend. And so maybe in the way that we market things, we really encourage people to bring a friend and make it feel, then they're leaning on their own natural community to come into your space. And I think for some people, that could be really helpful for them too, is like, hey, can you come with me? Can you come work with me in this co-working space? Or whatever, come with me to this event or something like that. I think that can be really helpful.
That's such a great idea, Crystal. And thank you for saying that, because for folks that are organizing events, maybe that's what they look at, is offering, a buddy discount, or encouraging that. Something you also said that brings to mind what folks can do is even letting folks know who is going to be at the event, who's registered, right? So you can kind of get a sense of, maybe like you go
sneak peek. Yeah,
exactly. Check out some LinkedIn profiles before you, show up, kind of thing. So you do, and maybe that's even encouraged. Maybe that's an activity that folks do with those, folks that have registered, like make it fun, right? Like, hey, here's who's coming, pick 2 people and find something that you have in common with them. So when you show up, you can chat with them at the event and
Exactly.
that instant connection.
Yeah. It's almost like a muscle, right? Like we haven't been working out this muscle of socializing and networking and being around people. And so now we're in this phase, I think, of just retraining that muscle, making it stronger. And how do you do that? You just keep the consistency is really what's key. But it doesn't have to be big steps along the way. You can take smaller steps as long as there's movement and you know what your goal is, right?
I think this is where co-working spaces could be a bridge, a transition, right? For folks that are experiencing that, as opposed to going to your local Chamber of Commerce event with 100 people.
Yes.
In a local co-working space where there's 12 people that day. Right. Mm-hmm. And when you do join that co-working space, let your community director or whoever it is you're connecting with, let them know, like, hey, I'm coming out.
Yeah. First timer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, hey, make sure to introduce me to some people here.
Yes.
Like just ask for what you need, frankly.
I mean, I talk about it a lot in my work, but I also live it too. I mean, I enjoy co-working for like my professional needs, but also my personal space. I make it a point to find community for, just different parts of my life, whether that's spiritually, I have a community there with friendships and motherhood journey. There's a community for that. And then as well as with working and co-working spaces too. So, I not only try to encourage people to find it, but I value it myself because, there's just, when you're with other people, you're able to, it's a two-way street, right? Like I can lean on the people in my community and have support and be poured into. And then there are times where I'm able to do that for others. I can be encouraging to them and so on and so forth. So, and again, kind of what we're talking about of that, like, sometimes we're going through things, whether it's I'm really struggling with, reintegrating back into these spaces and whatnot, then you're able to have those conversations with other people that maybe can share, like, I used to have the same problem. Here are some things that I did that were really helpful. And it could just be really validating. I always love being in spaces where we can bridge mental health with another, like, company or another area. And so we were able to do that of bridging mental health with like community and co-working space. And so I think that's really great.